Hello, and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast, where we interview runners in all stages of their running career about their first marathon experiences to prove to you that anyone can run a marathon. My name is Taylor, and if you're curious what it takes to train for 3 full Ironmans, this is the episode for you. This runner started running pretty young and eventually found her way into the triathlon world that she ended up falling in love with. Her first marathon experience was actually a training run leading up to her first full Ironman, and for both of those races, she experienced the trap we're all familiar with setting the bar a little too high for a first experience and coming out a little too quick. The positive, though, is that she's been able to learn so much from those experiences and pick up little improvements that she's trying to apply now to her third full Ironman attempt, which, by the way, by the time this podcast episode comes out, she'll have already completed. Let's jump right into the episode. I'm really excited to welcome Kaitlin. Kaitlin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast this weekend. How's your weekend going so far?
It's good. I got my run in this morning already.
Love it. Love getting it out of the way. Do you have to run tomorrow, or is Saturdays normally your run day?
Saturday's normally my run day, and then Sunday's normally my bike day.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So yeah, we were just talking about it before we started recording, but Kaitlin is training for a full Ironman coming up pretty soon. So I'm sure your training schedule is just absolutely crazy right now.
Yeah, a little bit. I think right now I'm in like that last build to the Ironman, so I'm doing a lot of brick workouts and like long workouts, but it's going to start coming down soon. So that's what I keep telling myself, is it's going to get better from here.
Just have to get over that hump, and then it's like smooth sailing from there for sure. Cool. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. We have kind of a funny story about how we got connected on here. You know my mom. There's no other way to go about that. You've met my mom. So how did we get connected? If you don't mind touching on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I work part-time at a running store in Eugene, Oregon, called Eugene Running Company. And your mom came in asking for a new pair of shoes, and she started talking about, oh, my daughter does this podcast and she likes to run and all this stuff. And I was like, and she's like, here's the podcast name, go check it out. So I looked it up later that day and I was like, oh, this is cool. Such a funny story that I feel like I have to go on here now and be
oh my gosh, yeah, fun. It was so funny. I'm glad that you reached out. Yeah, my mom was like, she's constantly just plugging all over the place. She's the biggest fan of My First Marathon, so love you, mom. But she came home that day and she's like, hey, I got a new pair of running shoes. Her and I, she maybe talked to you about it a little bit, but she trained for a couple half marathons when I was not running at all. So when I started running, she was not running at all. So we've kind of missed each other on our running journey. So I threw this idea out to her, like, I'm running now. You haven't been running. Maybe I can help kind of coach you through a half marathon and we can run one together. And she was down. But then she needed to go get shoes and figure out fuel all over again and all that. So that's why she ended up going in, and then calls me after and says, yeah, I got a pair of shoes and I think I got somebody for your podcast. I was like, sounds like a good trip, Mom.
2 in 1.
Yeah. But cool. Yeah, I'm really glad you reached out. I'm excited to hear your story and how you've gotten to doing all of these crazy Ironmans at this point. But I guess we'll just start from the beginning. How'd you get introduced to running in the first place?
I have ran, since I was like a little kid. So like you do the mile test growing up in gym class, and I would always beat everyone, and I always beat all the guys. So I was like, okay, this must be something that I'm good at. So I did like cross country throughout high school, and I didn't do it in college, but throughout high school, and then I ran track in college, and it's just one of those things that, like, from when I was a little kid, I was like, oh, this is like something that I'm beating a lot of people at. So I must be like, I seem like I'm okay at it. So like, let's stick with this and see what I can do. And, over the years, it kind of transformed from like in high school and college from the short distances to now running longer distances, because once you get done with those, you're kind of like, okay, now what? So here I am running halves and fulls and all that fun stuff.
Love it. So you came from more of a speed background, where you were running shorter distances and working on speed quite a bit. What was the transition like, moving from like shorter speed distances to then training for longer distances?
Yeah, it was funny because when I was in high school, I'd run cross country. So you do like 5K. And then for track, I'd run 400s and like 800s. So it was quite a shift. And I don't honestly, now I feel like I've been running long distance enough that I don't mind it. Like at first when I transitioned, I was like, oh my God, this is so much further like than what I was used to doing. But now that I've done that for like a couple of years, now it's like going to run a half, like running a half is so relative because it's like I'm training for a full. So you're like, oh, 13 miles. Okay, I can do that. Like, it just took me a little while to get there.
Yeah, I'm sure that mentally, because I was I dove into the endurance world first for some
Yeah.
reason, but I'm sure that mentally going from like shorter distances to longer can be tough. So I don't know if you remember, it sounds like it was a long time ago, but do you remember mentally what it was like the first time you had to run like a much longer distance and feeling like, oh my God, this is taking forever?
I'm trying to remember. I think like when I was starting to train for like the halves and the fulls, like when I was getting up beyond like 10 miles, that's when I was really like, oh, this is getting long. I don't know how I feel about this. And I just remember hitting like the 10-mile mark, and like after that point, those miles were like so slow. It just took forever. And I was like, come on, like we can be done at any time now. It's not 11 miles yet. Are you serious? So but now
so just
it's
building
like, oh,
up.
whatever.
Yeah, and it's funny. Now then when you start training for marathons and you have a 10-mile run in the middle of the week, you're like, oh, I finally got a short one. Yeah.
This is only gonna take
Let's
me an
go.
hour and a half or however long.
Right. Yeah, it's so funny how it transitions like that.
Yeah.
When did you decide to transition from half marathons to full? Because that's a big jump to go from half to full.
Yeah. So it all kind of started when one of my friends introduced me to what a full Ironman was. And it's a triathlon where you do a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a marathon run. And at that point, like I had run cross country. So I was like always interested in doing a full marathon eventually, but not at that point in time. But I was like, okay, this is something I want to do. This sounds so cool. I want to try this at some point in time in my life. And they have age group world championships that you can qualify for. And so that's kind of what she had showed me. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like from that point on, that was my goal, was to try and figure out how to qualify for age group world championships for an Ironman. So once I signed up for my first Ironman and started training, that's when I kind of switched from the half to the full distance, because I knew that's what I was going to have to do at the end of the Ironman. And so I knew I needed to run a full marathon just by itself first before trying to run it at the end of the race. So that's
right.
So I had done a couple of half Ironmans and like half marathons. So that's kind of when I had transitioned, was when I signed up to do the full Ironman. And ever since then, I've learned more about like what all the major world marathons are and all of that. Now that's all become my goals, is like to do all of those.
Yeah.
And like, because I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, the goalpost is constantly moving. I feel like once you find out something new.
Yeah. It's like, oh, now I have to do that.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. Well, first of all, finding out about an Ironman in high school and being like, yeah, I'm going to do that is insane. So kudos to you. That was not where my mindset was in high school. But it makes sense.
I grew up swimming and running, and I was like, oh, yeah, I can pick biking up. That won't be that bad. It is bad. It's still bad, but it's fine.
Yeah. So grew up swimming and running. And when you were did you compete when you were younger? So you said middle school you did cross country. Was there anything you were doing with swimming that was competing as well?
Yeah, I was on swim team. So I kind of like flipped back and forth between the two. Like during cross country season, I wouldn't go to swim practice. I'd focus on cross country. But then once that was over, I'd get into swim season. And then that was over, and then track would start. So like I kind of went back and forth between the two, which honestly I think saved me a lot of injuries too, because I got to switch. But I kind of did that all the way through middle school, through high school, and then even college. I swam and I ran at the school that I went to. So yeah, that's kind of what I did like growing up. So I was like, I've done this my whole life. I can probably just throw the biking in here and figure that out a little bit easier compared to swimming and running. Like I know those, and I'm way more confident with them. So Yeah.
Yeah. Just like a natural progression. But biking, I'm guilty of having the same mindset. I haven't ran or signed up for a triathlon or anything like that myself, but I'm always like, oh, the swimming and the running will be the parts I train for, and the biking I'll just figure out. But I know that that's not the case. So how hard was it to transition into like being more of a biker,
Oh,
having those other skills under you?
there is a whole world in biking, and there is so much within it. It is so intimidating, and it's so big, and there's so much going on with your bike, and so many different pieces you can change and adjust and modify. And I was like, I just have a bike and I'm on it. Like, I don't know what
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
else means. Like, it's got two wheels, they're pumped up, they're not flat. It's got the brakes, it's got the like gears, we're good. And
yeah,
like, I have learned so much about what to have on my bike, what not to have on my bike, what equipment you need, what helps you, what doesn't help you. It's like, it's super intimidating to try and figure out though when you're first starting, and like, and know where to start. Like, I got my very first bike, had I clip into it, and I had no
yeah,
idea that was a thing until I bought the bike. And they're like, "Oh yeah, you won't have regular pedals. You're gonna have pedals that you clip into." And I was like, "Wait, what? You
yeah. What does that
what
mean?
is that?" They're like, "You like clip into it," and I was like, "Oh, that's a thing." So then I proceeded to spend the rest of the night like riding up and down my road, clipping and unclipping from it, so I didn't fall on my butt too many times, but
Right.
it still happened.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's a crazy learning curve,
Yeah.
like especially having your feet clipped into something. That would scare me,
Yeah.
to not have control over that.
It takes a long time to get used to, and I feel like I've now, like, everything that I've learned has made me a better triathlete, has made me a better athlete. Um and like, going back, like, the way that I got to where I am today was like, I wouldn't have changed anything. And
Sure.
I'm glad of like how I did stuff and how I learned and whatnot, because that was the only way that I was going to. And if I never had those experiences or those chances, I wouldn't have figured out what I did and figured out what works best for me. And now I like truly enjoy biking. Like, I used to dread getting on it and like biking, and I hated it because I knew it was my weakness, and it still is,
Mm,
but like, now I don't hate getting on my bike. I enjoy going out for my long rides, and I like being on it because I finally found something and figured out what's comfortable for me and what works best for me on my bike. But it's
sure.
taking me like 10 years to get to that point. So it
Yeah.
takes a long time to figure it out.
And I think that I know this podcast we talk about running, obviously,
Yeah.
for the most part, but I think that there's got to be some similarities between that of just like trial and error and figuring it out for yourself
Yeah.
and all of that good stuff.
And I've learned that with running too. Like, my first marathon was a disaster. Like, I felt like crap when I hit mile 20, and I did not think I was going to finish because I was just like, and my mind, like, mentally, I was checked out. Like, at that point, because I felt so
Mm,
crappy. I was so checked out, and I so didn't want to be there. And I was like, this sucks. Like, I'm not having a good time. Why did I ever think that this would be easy? Um, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I like honestly just
yeah.
wanted to walk it into the finish. Like, I was so over it. But thankfully I was running it with a friend who was ready to go and kept kind of pulling me along a little bit those
That's
last 6
important.
miles. And that's definitely what got me to the finish line. And then we were within the last mile, and I stopped real quick, and I was like, I gotta stretch my calves. Like, I can't go any further. And I was like, you keep running though. I'll catch back. I'll try and catch up. And I didn't think I was going to catch up. I like did not think I had anything left in me. But I looked at my watch, and we wanted to be under 4 hours so badly. And I
Yeah.
looked down, and I was like, oh, we are going to make it if I can get up to her. So I somehow, whatever was left in me, dug as deep as I could, found it, and ran up to her. And I was like, we have to go. We'll be under 4. And so we took off to the finish. But like, if I didn't have someone with me, I would have walked. I would have been out. I would have been done. It's such
Yeah.
a mental game when you hit like mile 20.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you remember what your longest training run was leading up to the
It
marathon?
was 20 miles.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that because I had the same exact thing
Hmm.
happen where when I hit the distance that was all uncharted territory
Yeah.
for me. It was just like I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling like. This feels bad, and I'm hoping that everybody's feeling kind of bad right now because I'm not. Yeah, you don't know what that last 6 is actually going to feel like until
Yeah.
you're going through it.
Yeah. And um I also have learned, and this is more recent too, within like the last couple of years, I've learned how much I underfueled during all of
Mm,
my races until like maybe the last year. I significantly underfueled and did not take enough electrolytes in or carbs in. And it was like, well, no, duh, I'm hitting a wall at mile 20 or 21. Like, I'm not
right.
taking in what I need to like keep my body going or for my body to keep performing at the level that I want it to perform at. And so, ever since changing that, I've noticed like a significant difference. Like, you're tired because you've run for 20 miles, like, you're going to feel tired. But I
Right.
don't feel like I'm hitting that wall or hitting that point where I'm like, this is miserable. I hate this. I hate myself. Why am I doing this? Like, I don't get to quite that point anymore
Yeah.
where I
Yeah, that's
used
good. No,
to.
fuel is crazy. I've probably said it on this show before, but I can distinctly remember the first run where I actually fueled properly and was like, "Oh, wow, that was a huge difference to what I was doing before." I
That's
don't know
what's
if you have a similar thing.
you're like, that's what it's supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can walk after my run? Huh, that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
even with triathlon too, like I've noticed it. I did not take in enough and I try to push myself as hard as I could. And I get like halfway through the run, specifically like on the full Ironmans, and I'd be nauseous and dizzy and I'd want to throw up. Like
mm,
it was, and I'd have every single emotion like going on at the same time for the second half of the run of like, I'm so close to
right.
being done, just gut it out. At the same time, my body's like, no, you need to stop because we're going to throw up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Constantly fighting with
yeah,
yourself.
100%.
Yeah, that's intense. So, so the first marathon didn't. I mean, you had to get it under your belt because you had this bigger goal that you were training for.
Yeah.
But the full Ironman that you were training for. But what through training for your first marathon do you remember being like some lessons learned? I guess you could say.
Um, so I trained for my first marathon when I lived in Wisconsin during
Mm,
the summer, where it's really hot and humid. And I mean, you want to sleep in, right? Like in the summer, you want to sleep in on your
yeah,
weekends.
it happens.
Yeah, don't do that. Just get up and run because
Yeah,
it's miserable if you try to do it when it's 80 degrees and 90% humid out, and it's not fun. And you just feel like you're gonna like you feel sticky the whole time. You feel like you're gonna die because it's so hot too.
yeah,
It's just get it out of the way and just do it. That was my biggest thing, was like trying to get up early and run because it's so much easier to just snooze the alarm and like do it like, oh, I'll do it later, it's fine. Um but every time I got up early and ran, I always felt better the rest of the day. Like you always feel better once you do it. It's just like getting to that point of getting up and wanting to do it takes a little bit of extra like oomph, but once you do
yeah.
it, it's fine. Once I'm actually running, I'm okay. But getting to that point is like the worst process sometimes.
I agree. Yeah, it's hard. It's like it's another mental battle before you go put yourself through a mental
Another
battle. It's
mental
just
battle,
getting
yeah.
yourself out there.
Well, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you have North Carolina's probably pretty humid, isn't it?
It's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal. We're still feeling it,
Yeah.
unfortunately. I'm hoping fall comes pretty soon, fingers crossed, but it
It's
still feels like summer.
it's nice here. It was like 50s for my run this morning. It was perfect.
That's perfect.
Um,
Yeah.
but I went back to Wisconsin in like early September and went for a run, and it was 94% humid, and I like stepped
Oof.
outside and I was running and I was like, what is this? Like, why is my shirt sticking to me? Because I hadn't done it in so long, and I was like, oh yeah, humidity exists in other parts of the country. Not in
Yeah, I
Oregon.
do miss that about Oregon. The lack of humidity is fun. I didn't start running until I moved out to North Carolina, so I didn't get to
You didn't get to
experience it,
experience any of the good
unfortunately.
parts of it.
No, no, but yeah, humidity, weather, all of that, it really does play a big difference. So 100% agree. Yeah, if you
Totally
can just get
does.
it out of the way, even if you sacrifice an hour of sleep that you would have
Right.
maybe,
Just nap later. It's
could have
fine.
needed. Yeah, exactly.
Take
You
a
can
nap.
make up for it later.
Uh,
Getting up a little bit
yeah.
early, something.
The
Yeah.
other the other thing that I learned too was like um maybe updating my shoes like earlier than I needed to or wanted
Mm,
to. Um, like I'd always gone by like the 500-mile rule, but I could tell like towards the end of training slash not necessarily like I didn't notice it too much during the marathon, but towards the end of training, like I could just tell that I was getting like I was getting a little more achy on my legs and my feet than I normally had been. And if I
mm,
had updated the shoes then, I could have probably like broke them in to run with them during the marathon. But I didn't get any new shoes, I think, until like afterwards. So, like being
gotcha.
on top of gear and finding gear that's comfortable for you too. Like, um, I would run with a little waist water bottle thing, but it would always make my stomach feel like not great because of it like pressing into my stomach. And I
Mm,
switched then to putting water bottles in like pockets on the side of my pants. And I felt so much better then because I didn't have something like jostling around on my hips. And that just really seemed to
right.
bug me when I was running. So it's like, try like trial and error. Find the things that are comfortable for you. Find the sports bras, find the shorts that you like. Like, find those things that work and try a couple of different brands because everyone's going to have something different and need something different. Um so like getting recommendations from friends is great, but like try a couple of other things because that's what they do might not work for you or what you do might not work
Right.
for them. And you just got to kind of figure out what you like the best and what is the most comfortable for you. Because if you're not
Yeah.
comfortable on race day, you're not going to do well. If you're comfortable,
No.
that's going to make it a lot more easy or a lot easier to race.
Yeah. Yeah. There's enough going on race day that your gear should be the least of
Right.
your worries
Yeah.
by the time you get to race day for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And training's perfect for trying out a lot of those things, for trying out fuel, for trying out
Mhm.
shoes, for trying out belts. Like you said,
Yep.
sometimes you can wait a little bit too long to be able to test too many new things out. But yeah, if you can start to prioritize just throwing in a few new things throughout your training block, you'll
Hmm.
by the time race day rolls around, you'll know what works, what
Yeah.
doesn't work, and everything for
And
sure.
just, and I was always trying to find like the cheapest deal or like the best deal for stuff.
Yeah,
Just pay whatever extra it is. If it's something that you really want to try or like you know is going to work for you, just pay the extra for it because the hassle of trying to maybe have something that's a little bit cheaper but doesn't work as well is never worth it in my
or
opinion.
convince yourself that
Yeah.
it's gonna work
Yeah.
because you already bought it.
It's not worth it. Find what's comfortable for you and if that happens to be more expensive, it's probably going to save you more money in the end because you might not be injured or you might not feel crappy afterwards. So just just do it.
Yeah. Do you have an example of one that you spent a little bit of extra money on, but you totally feel like it paid off at this point?
I'm trying to think. I feel like how I carry my water. Like
Mhm.
I tried to find like less expensive like waste water pouch
Mhm.
and that like it was not comfortable for me and I couldn't get it to stop jostling around and it just always like I'd come home like my stomach didn't feel good because it's constantly was like beating on my stomach and my hips. I always had to go to the bathroom because it was right over my bladder, so I kept hitting it. Um
Yeah.
and but like that like I wish I would have tried a nicer one first or just bought a ton of like the little water bottles and got like a handheld one because now I run with it in my hand and it's so much easier for me. Or I put water
Sure.
bottles in my like side pockets on my leggings, but I didn't want to like spend the extra money to get the pockets like on the leggings like because some of those were
Right,
really
right.
expensive. I was like, I'll just buy the $20 water bottle holder. It'll be fine. And now I've spent way more money getting all this other stuff because I didn't want to get it in the first place. But like now those all work way better for me.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point.
I
Yeah.
didn't ever try the like I know people run with like a vest on.
Yeah.
I've never done that because I just don't like the stuff on my back when I'm running drives me nuts. So I just don't like that, but I know a lot of people that have invested in really nice ones that work well for them. Like my husband found a really he tried to get a cheap one and it didn't work, but we ended up getting a nicer one and now he loves it. So
Yeah.
it just pay the extra because it's going to last you longer and it'll be worth it.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. No, 100% agree. No, I think those are all good trial and error things from your first
Mm-hmm.
training cycle. Um, and you ran the marathon. You said you crashed out, but you were able to find your way through to
Found
the
my
finish
way.
line
Yep.
from there.
Got to the finish.
How far out were you from running your first Ironman at that point?
I think it was like a month and a half, somewhere between a month and a half between that and the first my Ironman. So
Okay.
like I tried to time it as best as I could, so that was going to be kind of like my peak running mileage, and then I was going to go down from there, or try and like maintain
Okay.
a little bit and then go down. So, um, yeah, that's kind of where that was kind of the time frame for that.
Okay. Yeah. And then this is just me being naive
Yeah,
about Ironmans,
no,
but
it's okay.
do you taper everything at the same time? Like when you start to taper your run, do you taper your swim and your bike at the same time too?
Yeah, basically, the big thing that I've kind of learned and noticed with with triathlon taper is that I'm backing off the intensity a lot more, but like the duration isn't going down as significantly because it's still such a long event that I don't want to drop off too much right
Right.
beforehand. But yeah, I kind of bring the intensity back on all of them at the same time most of the time.
Okay, cool. Cool. That makes sense. So leading up to race day, how were you feeling for leading up to your first Ironman? I mean, that's a huge deal.
I was really excited just because I was excited to do it because it's something I had. So, like, I did my first, so my friend had introduced me, it was 2011, and I did my first one in 2017. And, oh, this is another tip that I should have said, I guess. What I learned about every single race that I've done is whenever you do a new distance, do not try to race it as if you're going to qualify for like a world championship or something like that. Because
Yeah.
every time I've done that, I've gone out way too hard. And then I also think that's part of why I was miserable at mile 20 of my first marathon because I had a goal time. I was determined to hit this time. And um and then when I like got in jeopardy of not hitting it, like everything else kind of came crashing down because I was like, I worked so hard, I focused on this, why am I not hitting this, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So from like, and I learned that with my first Ironman too because I was really excited and I really wanted to qualify for the world championships, and I was not even close. I learned again on the run with my nutrition. What I had taken on the bike didn't sit well in my stomach for the run.
Mm.
So the run was tough. I had to
Mm.
stop and walk because multiple times because I thought I was going to throw up. But I had gotten to the run and I was like, you're so close to finishing. Like, you just got to finish at this point. Um, because you've made it how many miles? You've made it this far. Like, you got to go get that finisher, like the shirt and the medal. Like, you're so
Right, right.
close. Like, at that point, like, yes, it's still a lot of running, but like, I've done how many I've done 100 some miles. Like, at this point, I've got 20 left. Like, okay, I can do that. But it took me a lot longer than I wanted it to and than I anticipated because my fuel that I was using on the bike just didn't sit well. And to this day, I still can't look at another goo without getting nauseous.
PTSD by goo.
um, they had apples and oranges sitting on the run course, and they were the best apples and oranges I've ever had in my entire life because it wasn't a goo.
Yeah, right,
I was like,
right.
I need anything but goo right now. Like, I feel so and I trained with them, but whatever, like, for whatever reason on race day, whether I was maybe, one, I probably wasn't having enough of it. And then
Mm.
two, like, it just didn't sit well in my stomach, or I was pushing harder because it was the race. So my body wasn't used to that with it. It just did not sit well with me. So I like I said, best apple and oranges I'd ever had in my entire life because I just
Yeah.
didn't want to see another goo ever. Um, but yeah, so I finished and I did it. So I was excited and I was happy that I finished. but like in the back of my head, I was a little disappointed because I really, really wanted that qualifying time, or I wanted to try and qualify, but it was my first time that I ever raced that distance. And so I learned, I was like, for me to expect myself to qualify for something the first time that I've ever done a distance, and not like I knew the course, but it's not like I had biked the course a ton and knew it like exactly where things were and what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like to expect myself to be able to like perform at a really high level was just, I think, unrealistic. And I needed to learn how to race that distance and what it felt like before I just like, before to try and do that. Because that just, I felt like wasn't realistic to try and hold.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny. I've heard that. I've heard that a lot, especially people that have come on have talked about coming out way too hot on their first marathon or first half or whatever it might be. Um, yeah, the benefit of slowing down for sure. You're
Yeah.
gonna PR no matter what.
Yeah.
It's your first time, so you might as well just take it, learn from it, and yeah, do make mistakes so that you can come back the next time and do it better.
And
But I know a lot of people that'll fall into that trap for
yeah.
sure.
And I feel like I didn't enjoy it as much because I was so focused on trying to get this
Yeah.
one goal. And like same with the marathon too. I was so focused on hitting this one time or this one goal that like I just didn't enjoy what I was doing, and like taking in what I was doing, like especially during the Ironman. Like you completed an Ironman and I was so focused on this one thing and I was so mad that I didn't get it, that I like feel like I didn't truly enjoy what I had just done, and like the
Yeah.
like what I just went through to like get to the finish line. And like it's one of those things, I go back and watch videos of me finishing now and I like almost get in tears now because it's like I can't believe I did that. Like I
Yeah.
can't believe that I was able to do that. So it's one of those things where it's like step back and like look at what you're doing and realize like how amazing it is and enjoy it, instead of being so focused on the goal, because the goal is not always has to be everything.
Right, right. No, yeah, it's good to have goals because it gives us something to shoot for. But you have to have a little bit of grace with yourself.
Yeah.
What you're, especially with an Ironman. I mean, that's such a phenomenal accomplishment. Whether you're the first person to finish or you're the last person to finish. So
Exactly.
you got to be able to, yeah, just enjoy the process.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the honestly the best part about it was I went and got the little Ironman tattoo afterwards, and that was like
Oh,
a week or
nice.
two after, and that was like one of the best parts, was getting to put that on my calf, because I'm like, now
Yeah,
every race I go to, I'm like, I know people see that and everyone here knows what that means. So like
yeah. I've done this. I've been here
yeah,
before.
exactly. I know what I'm doing. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna act like it.
Yeah, yeah. Fake it. Well, cool. So we got the first one under the belt.
Mhm.
Maybe not the experience you were hoping for, but you got it under your
Yeah,
belt nonetheless. So what were you thinking from there? Where you did like how did the goals shift after you did your first Ironman?
oh gosh, I think I became more focused on qualifying, because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I've done this. Now I know what I need to improve. I know how I can improve. And I know what I need to change. I have, or at least I have a
Yeah.
better idea of what I need to change. So I switched up my nutrition. Um, I switched up a couple of things that I was taking, and that seemed to really help and like get rid of the problem that I was having, but I still wasn't taking enough. And I think that's what my downfall was on my second one, because
Mm.
I was leading my age group for probably 90% of the race. And to qualify for the world championships, you have to be first in your age group. Sometimes they have more than one slot depending on how big your group is. They'll like allocate extra spots because you have such a big group. It's not fair to give just one when there's another group that has like two people in it and they get one.
Right.
So they
That
like
makes
do like
sense.
a
Yeah.
proportional allocation. My group only had one spot. And I was leading for probably 95% of the race. I was in first. And the second half of the marathon, my stomach started to like flip on me.
Mm.
And it was all again, when it was nutrition again. But it was because I didn't take enough in on the bike and the run to keep my body going at the level that I wanted it to rate to perform at. And I think
Gotcha.
some of the nutrition I was taking didn't have the right amount of carbs and fats and all that stuff in it. And so it didn't digest quick enough. So it was just sitting in my stomach as I'm trying to run. And
Mm.
that just, my stomach was just like, yeah, no, this doesn't feel good. And we're going to let you know it. So it, I didn't, I didn't walk. But I had to slow down because every time I felt like my body felt okay. Like I felt like I could have run faster. And every time I tried to, my stomach like flipped and was like, nope, we're going to throw up. Nope, we're
That's
not
so
going to feel
frustrating.
good. And you're like, okay, great. So that's kind of, that's kind of how that went. So I ended up, I think it was like 5 or 6 minutes behind the girl that ended up in first.
Mm.
So I was second in my age group, which was, and I had a huge time improvement from my last one. So I still did good, but it wasn't my goal, which was really, really crushing because I had trained, I think, like 2 years at that point for it. And I knew exactly what I
Oh,
needed to do. I knew what I needed to change. I had changed all those things. I had thought I had it figured out. And then it just all kind of like crashed on the last 13 miles. And it was like 13 miles left. Come on. So that was my second one. And so I learned even more from that. I was like, okay, this is what I need to change with my nutrition. I need to take more in, and I really like honed in on that stuff the last like year or two. Like I've really tried to
mhm.
figure that out and how much more I need or what is a good amount to be taking in so that I don't feel like this on the run and that I can push through it on the run. And the other thing was I don't think I was taking in enough like electrolytes either. Like I wasn't replenishing those, which you also need those to keep competing. So
Right.
I've adjusted I've learned all of that again and I've adjusted it all again. And so I'm hoping this third one, I've at least gotten it to a point that it's better. It's probably not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than the last two. So that run
Yeah.
goes smooth.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited to see how it turns out. I mean, this is like a long time coming for you, where you each time you've learned a little bit that you're going to be able to apply. So that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and I'm sure there's others, hopefully, out there that are a little bit naive to Ironman training too. But I'm curious about how do you test that kind of stuff through training? Because I'm assuming you're not doing like when you're training for a marathon, you have a 20-mile run where you get to
Mhm.
kind of work out a lot of the kinks. I'm assuming you're not doing like a mock Ironman ahead of doing an Ironman. That's a lot. So how do you
Yeah.
train for fuel for that kind of thing?
So, like, a great example is yesterday. I did a 4 hour bike ride and then an hour run right after it. And that's kind of when I'll test. And I have intervals that are kind of like my race pace goals. So
Mm,
I'm competing at, or like I'm practicing at a higher level. So it's kind of simulating a little bit more of like what it's going to feel like during the race. And especially doing like that long of a bike off to the run gives me a really good idea of like nutrition wise for like what works and what doesn't work and how I'm feeling.
gotcha.
And what I've also switched to is like a lot of taking in a lot of stuff by like fluids, which I think has also helped because then there's not as much just sitting in my stomach, which is I think what
Mm,
causes parts of the problem.
yeah.
Um and so that's how I test it is kind of like, okay, I'm going to be taking in as much as I would on race day. And then I'm going to have to go run and I'm going to see how that feels. Like, do I need to tweak anything? What's feeling good? What's not feeling good? And every workout that I've done so far, and I'll test it out at like other triathlons that are, it's a little bit shorter, but it still gives me an idea of like if this is going to work or not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've done over the summer. Like I did a half Ironman in July, and that was like my best time to test like my nutrition. Is this going to work for me? Is this not going to work? Or what should I switch up? And so far in that race, it worked. I didn't have any problems. Um, and I didn't have any problems yesterday. So what I've been able to modify with it and learn about my nutrition, I think has really helped this year specifically. I've changed up a ton and really focused on taking in more. And I think that's what's made the difference. because I can tell on my run that I'm not as, like, I don't feel as drained as I normally do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. I'm just like taking it all in. But no, that's so interesting how you train for that kind of thing,
Yeah.
cuz being able to take in that amount of fuel and then having to go run
Yeah.
is not something I've considered, because when you fuel for running, you fuel as you run. So
Yeah.
like it's interesting. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I've learned a lot to fuel on the first half of the bike, like take more in on the first half, so then the second half I'm not as heavy, and like I think
Mm,
that also helps my run too a little bit, of like I didn't just take in all of the carbs on the second half. I kind of
right.
loaded the first half with more and the second half with a little bit of less. So I think that also helps me once I get off to run. But yeah, I mean, on the days that I don't work, I spend probably 5 or 6 hours training for it.
Crazy.
It is a
It's a
huge time
full-time job.
commitment. Um, and you know, the first one, like, you know it going in, but until you actually are doing it, you don't realize it. And so that also is kind of what I learned through the first one, of like how much I'm truly going to be spending biking, running, and swimming. Um, and now like I'm aware of it, and I've gotten a pretty good groove down of like how much time I can spend on doing stuff, and how I can spend my days off and that kind of thing. Um, but it's a lot, and there are definitely days and weeks that it's really stressful to try and get all of the training that I want in.
For sure.
And I mean, but like I also know that it's important to be, so that I can complete this and like do it safely and be prepared. But I've had plenty of breakdowns and plenty of moments of doubt, and plenty of moments where I'm like, I don't really want to do this. I'm over this. Like, I want to sit on my couch. I don't want to train. I don't want to do this anymore. Um, but thankfully, I have like a really supportive family and friends and my husband, which I don't think I could do this if I didn't have any of them there to help me and kind of like be that motivation / be that person to get me out of the door on those days that I don't want to do it. Um, because it's tiring sometimes when you're trying to work and
Yeah.
train. It's a lot.
I mean that's insane. 6 hours of training for a one block is just, yeah, that's crazy. It's a full-time job you've got on top of what you're doing in with your out of running life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've had, when we were talking before, I know that you've shot for the Boston goal too, and qualifying for
Mm-hmm.
Boston. So you've just constantly are putting yourself through these really intense training cycles. So maybe we could touch a little bit about that and that goal. How did the Boston
Yeah.
dream kind of come about?
Well, so I was in high school when the whole like Boston bombing happened. And I
Mm,
think that's when I really kind of like started to learn what like major marathons are, and like what like that they exist. Um and how like historic Boston was, and how much like every like runner, yeah, like you kind of learn how much everyone wants to do that race, and how like
yeah,
historic it is and how cool it is. Um and it's kind of, I love the qualifying times for like the majors, because none of them are like super fast to the point that it's like, oh god, I'm never going to be able to hit this. Like they seem to have like fairly, I mean they've got to be competitive, but it's not like,
sure.
oh, you have to be running 6-minute miles for the marathon. Like no, you can be running, you have to run fast, but you can be running decent paces. Like it's not like an unreachable, like unattainable type of goal. And in Eugene, like lots of people run Boston and they talk about it, and you hear all about
Yeah,
Boston, and it's just like listening to all the stories and what people tell you about it, and like the course and the atmosphere, and you're like, I want to be a part of this. Like this sounds absolutely amazing. And then you like the whole um bombing kind of even brought it more to like the forefront of like, this is something that I want to do one day, and this sounds so cool. And like watching the movie about it and then watching some of those survivors run it was like, oh, this is absolutely incredible, and I want to be a part of this. Like this is historic to do. And so I ran the Eugene Marathon in 2022 and qualified for Boston. And so
Wow.
I
Yeah.
ran
Great.
Boston in 23 then. And it is, I mean, it's what everyone says. It lives up to all the hype. It lives up to all the expectations. Um, Heartbreak Hill is not as bad as everyone says it is. It sucks that it's at mile 21, but if you know it's coming,
it's just the timing of it.
you know it's coming, it's not too bad. Because I got up to the top and I was like, oh, okay, like, yeah, that's not fun, but like, I thought that was going to be worse. So
yeah,
just do a couple hills in your training and you'll be fine. But it's like the entire course is lined with people. Like, no, like when people would tell me that, I thought people were exaggerating. I was like, there's no way that this is truly happening. But it is like lined with people the entire 26.2 miles. And it is so loud the entire time. Every
so
time
cool.
I thought I could feel my adrenaline dropping. Someone be screaming, we go through a crowd or whatever, and it's like, oh, there it is, it's right back, and I'm like ready to pick my pace up again. And like it's just I don't even have words to describe like how you feel during it, because you're tired and you're exhausted because you're running a marathon, but like you're smiling and having fun the entire time. Like it was such a mixed emotions going on because I was so happy the entire race. And then I was so tired at the same time. But it was just like absolutely incredible and to be a part of it. And I was that was the year that was 10 years after the bombing had happened. So they did a whole
cool.
extra ceremony for it and whatnot. And so that was kind of cool to see and like get to be a part of. Like, this has happened. This is still happening 10 years later. Like, after this all happened, we're still coming back stronger and we're still running this and whatnot. So that was really cool. And then, oh gosh, like when you turn to go to that finish line, take it in, because that is like the coolest finish like ever. And it's so loud and it's so like insane that you're, and like look around, like see how many people are like on the streets because you can't get through to like walk around. Like it is so packed. My mom wanted to get a finish photo of me so badly. She stood at the finish line from like 7 or 8 a.m. that day until I finished.
Oh
my wave didn't start until like 10. And she was at that finish line waiting for me. She wanted a finishing photo so badly.
I love that.
But like I'm glad she did. I felt so bad because I was like, you do not need to stand there the whole time. If I don't have a photo of me finishing, it's gonna be okay. They're gonna sell us photos. I'll find one. But it's so fun that she did, because you can see the crowds of people behind me and whatnot, and like it gives me a sense of like the atmosphere again whenever I watch it. And it's just the coolest. It's the coolest thing. And finishing is just like the most surreal thing in the world.
Yeah. Can you even process it? Like, that's what I've heard a lot from people who have ran like New York City and Chicago and all these big major marathons. It's like, it was cool and I can feel it when I think back on it, but like it was a lot. Can you process that amount of emotion with all those people around? I'm so curious.
I don't know if you can, or I don't know if you just kind of like take it, because I still like, I think back about it and I talk about it and I feel like I become speechless. So like, I don't know if you truly ever process it all, or if you're just like in this state of just being in shock that it happened and that you did it and that like you loved it all at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know if it actually truly is like you ever process it, or if you just keep talking about it to the point that you finally process it. You say it enough, right?
You tell people to go do it and experience it for themselves so that they can feel it too.
Yeah.
No, that's so cool. And I think that I'll make a little disclaimer that you don't have to run major marathons to be a runner, of course.
Oh, no.
The local marathons and everything are just as fun and have their place. But if you ever do get the opportunity to run one, go for it. From what I've heard, it's just insane. Yeah, so go for it for sure.
And
have you ran? I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, you're good.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, and you don't necessarily, like, I know there's other ways to do it other than qualifying. Like, I've had lots of friends do it through charities and fundraise
Yeah,
and
for sure.
whatnot. And so, like, there's so many other good ways and opportunities to get involved with it. So, like, yes, there's qualifying times, but you also don't feel like you have to have a qualifying time or that you have to be good enough to do it, because that's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, have you ran any other major marathons, or is Boston the
I
one so far?
Oh, Boston's the only one so far. I haven't yet. Because I did Boston and then I backed off of marathon training because I knew this year I wanted to do a full Ironman. And
Gotcha.
I'm I try not to do like tons and tons of long distance events all the time. Like, I don't want to be
Yeah.
in marathon shape all the time because that's exhausting and that's probably just not good for my body either. Like, I
Yeah.
need to back off and give it some breaks. Um, so I haven't I haven't technically qualified for another one. I could have used Boston to do another one probably, but I knew with what I had coming up and what I wanted to do, like schedule wise, that it just wasn't going to work
Yeah.
to do another one. But my goal is to try and do all of them because I want to get the medal that has all of them on it now.
Just like knowing you for the last 50 minutes, that does not surprise me. It seems like
I
you
saw
love these big goals.
I saw them handing out the medals at Boston, like if you completed all 7 or whatever, and I was like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah. We'll do just about
I
anything for
need
a medal and
another
a
medal
t-shirt.
because I don't have
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, it'll never be enough. We're going to constantly be chasing more medals and t-shirts.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have enough
For
t-shirts
sure.
either. Yeah.
Oh, it's so fun though. So, but you're laser focused on this goal right now, so that makes sense. If you could like offer advice, just everything that you've learned from all of your years of running to, let's just say, somebody who's thinking about running their first marathon right now, how would you sum up some advice for somebody like that?
I know other people have said this on the show too. I would
Yeah.
say just do it. Um, like, because there's never going to be a good time or a right time, right? Like, I mean, you can say that about anything in life. It's rarely do you ever have a right time for everything. Um, but if it's something that you want to do and you are willing to commit to it and follow through with the training, just go for it because you're never going to be ready per se. But once you do it, that's when you're going to learn. If you never do it, you'll never learn and you'll never try it again then because you're too afraid of something failing. You're going to fail. It's inevitable. It's part of the
Yeah.
process. But like that's how you're going to get better and figure out what you want to do. Or how to, like, if you like to do this or if you're like, nah, one and done and I'm good. Like I just wanted to say that I did it. And that's fine too.
Yeah, for sure.
But then you either learn like, oh, I love this and I want to keep going, or like, nah, I'm good. This has been enough for me.
But you did something hard, and I feel like even for those people who are one and done, like you learn so much about yourself
Yeah.
training for something like that.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to walk away with nothing,
Mm-mm.
even if that's the only thing that you do in
Yeah.
the running world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the time I feel like people say they're one and done and then you do it and it's kind of like, oh no,
Biggest lie.
I like this. I'm going to do it again. It becomes a
For
little
sure.
addicting. Like I get done with an Ironman and I'm tired, and then probably about an hour or two later, I'm plotting. Okay, when is my next one? What am I gonna do? Even
For
though
sure.
2 hours ago I was like, I'm never doing this again. This sucks. Blah, blah, blah. But no, then I'm ready to do it again.
I've met very few people that have been one and done, and like we said, that's totally fine if you fall into that category. But like I said that after my first half marathon, I was like, I just want to run a half marathon because I have nothing better to do and I want to get in shape. And then you run it, and you're like, oh, maybe I can run a marathon. And then you run the marathon, and you're like, oh, maybe I can run two. Or some people go, oh, maybe I'll run an ultra or whatever. It just kind of like stems from there.
Yeah. And even like the local marathons, like Eugene does a marathon every year, and I know Portland does a marathon every year, and like they're a lot of fun too. You don't like we talked about, it doesn't have to be a major, but like the local ones can be a lot of fun and have great atmospheres too. So like it doesn't honestly, almost any race day I feel like has a pretty fun atmosphere. But like those local ones that are a little bit bigger but not like huge like the majors are a lot of fun, and a lot of people come out to just cheer because the city kind of shuts down for that, and like everyone wants to kind of see what's going on. And so like either way, I just think it's a fun atmosphere to have on race day too, which is nice. It makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. I mean, what other aspect of your life are people, like thousands of people you don't know, going to cheer for you?
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's fun.
And it's nice because so like Ironman will put your name on the bib sometimes. So I randomly hear like Kaitlin, and I'm like, who is that? Like who's talking? Is that to me?
Yeah. No, it's cool. It's cool.
So
A good feeling.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I'm excited to hear what's coming up next for you. Obviously this Ironman, you said end of October is
End of
coming up?
October. Yep. October 27th.
Sweet. That's so exciting. Do you have any goals, specific goals for this one? Or the goal is to make it to the
Yeah,
championships?
the goal is to qualify for the world championships, the age group world championships, which
Yeah.
that would qualify me for 2025. So that would be my goal, is to qualify for the next year. And I like to put it all out on my Instagram, like documenting kind of what I'm doing and like
Love
just
that.
like life in general with it. And kind of like how I'm balancing working full time and training for this. Not to like show people like, oh, look at how cool I am, but like, no, like you can do this. It's possible. It's going to take a lot and it's going to be challenging, but like this is totally possible to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, my primary goal is to qualify for the world championships. So yeah.
Love it. So exciting. And I know we're kind of getting to the end here, but I am also curious, like, just because you mentioned it there, like we're working full time and doing something like this, it's a time commitment. So like when you have doubt, what are you saying to yourself to keep yourself going?
Um, Honestly, I think one thing that really helps me is having a coach that like writes the workouts for me, because there's that extra like aspect of accountability, which I think really helps me personally
Mm-hmm.
kind of like um take in like, hey, like this is what he put out for you to do. You've got to get this done. Um there are lots of days that I just don't want to, and that I'm tired and I'm exhausted because my job, I work as a physical therapist at a hospital. So I spend all day lifting people and moving people around.
Mm,
So I spend a lot of time on my feet to begin with. So sometimes I'm not motivated to work out, but I just try to start getting ready and get myself like out the door. And then once I get myself out the door, it's a lot easier.
yeah,
Um,
that's so important.
I think like regardless of whether I want to do it or not, I have that doubt in my head, and like um that not wanting to do it in my head regardless. But I know what I signed up for and I know what it takes to do this. And so then it just becomes, instead of me motivating myself, it becomes like discipline, and
Mm,
having the discipline to do it even when I don't want to do it, and showing up
yeah,
and just starting it um is like the biggest key for me. Is like if I can get started, then once I get started, like everything else takes over. Everything else gets out, like I clear everything else out of my brain. Um Everything else kind of melts away and like hone in on what I'm doing, but I just need to get to that point of getting started. And
yeah,
once I do, like, even if I don't want to, I just start getting ready for it. I start putting my stuff together. I just start the process of it because I know I'm going to do it regardless, or I know I need to do it regardless, I guess is like my
yeah.
best way to describe how I kind of work through those moments. But there's definitely been times where I like snooze and I'm like, oh, I'll do it this afternoon. It's fine.
Of course, yeah,
And it
of course, we
happens.
all have that.
Life happens. But like, that's, and as long as I know I'm going to get to it at some point.
Yeah, yeah. No, that I like that. I think I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but it's something like you can't always rely on your own motivation, but you can always rely on your own discipline.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. Yeah, just you can't. Oh, you're not going to be 100% motivated 100% of the time, but
Mm-mm.
you can be 100% disciplined all the time.
I think I'm trying to remember. I saw it on someone's Instagram, or I saw it somewhere on social media, that was like motivation gets you started, but discipline is what actually finishes it. And that's
I
so
love that.
true. You're When you sign up for a race or something, you're totally motivated. You just saw everyone run at a race. It was a really cool atmosphere. You just went and like spectated an Ironman, and you're like, I want to try this. that's what gets you started. But the discipline to continue training when you don't want to, when you've had a tough day, when you're not motivated, that's how you're going to get through it. And that's going to make you, that's going to make you a better athlete, like a better competitor when you get to the actual race. Because you've worked through all those times that you didn't want to do it. And that time in the race when you're not feeling it and you're feeling down and you're like, I want to give in. You didn't when you didn't want to during training. So you're not going to now because you've worked way too hard to get to this point to just be like, oh yeah, I'll just stop.
Right. Like, no, that's so important. So important. Yeah. When things get tough.
Always what I tell myself when I get to those points in races of like, past me would be so mad at myself because I gutted out that one workout that I didn't want to do and that sucked and I was miserable. Past me would be so mad that I was like ready to give up. If I gave up right now, like, you would be so mad at yourself if you got to that finish line and you're like, I didn't do what I could have done, or I could have given it more, or why did I walk? Whatever it may be. Like, that past you that gutted that workout out is going to be so mad that you didn't try or that you gave in because it started to hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it is. Training's always going to hurt. Racing's always going to hurt. It's just getting used to it and being okay with it.
Being okay with it, and like remembering why the heck you're doing the whole thing too. Yeah. When things get hard, it's like when you can't you reach for just motivation in general, like pull from what the heck am I doing this for? What is my why here? And sometimes I know for me, my why is just doing hard things. So if your why is doing hard things, here you are. Here's a hard thing for you to do. You know, it's so important.
And you can't. I mean, like we all prove all the time that we can do hard things, and that whatever you set your mind to, you can do. And I think that's like one thing that I've really learned too is like whatever, like I'm currently running and biking paces that like 2 or 3 years ago I would have dreamed of doing, but I've put in like I've showed up consistently, I've put in the work, and now I'm actually like seeing that pay off. Like you always hear it and it might take you years to get to that point, and that's where I was getting frustrated, was like it's taking so long, I'm not seeing improvements, I'm not getting better, like what is this? But now I'm starting to see like I'm starting to see everything pay off, and I'm hitting times and hitting goals that like I had dreamed of hitting a couple years ago. So it will happen. It just takes time, and it's so easy for me to say that now because I did the hard part and I'm done with it, and now I'm looking back on it. But like it's gonna come. It just is a matter of when. You just got to keep working those times, like those days and those races where everything goes wrong and it feels crappy and you're not doing good. It's gonna happen. But those are the races that make you stronger and make you better. And just know that there is going to be a good race somewhere out there. It just might not be the next one, but there's going to be one. You're going to get to that good race eventually.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. Yeah. It's a matter of when. I like how you said that.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, sweet. Well, thank you so much for walking through all that. I'm just going to have to text my mom after this and thank her again for introducing us, because you've been so awesome to talk to. I really enjoyed all the advice and how you've gotten to this point. And I just love that you have all these big goals for yourself that you're shooting for. Excited to see how they all end up.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun being on. I love doing this. This is so much fun.
Runners will talk about running, that's for sure. You can count on that.
Anytime you want to talk about triathlon, I'll do it all day.
I love it.
Running.
Well, cool. Well, if anyone wants to follow along with you, see how this Ironman pans out, where can they find you? Yeah, so
I am primarily posting the most on Instagram. So it's Kaitlin _Carew _try. So, but there's lots of ways to spell Kaitlin. But anyway, so that's my handle where I'm kind of posting everything in my journey and how it's going. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll link it below so that everybody can find it. But
Perfect.
thank you again for coming on. Really enjoyed talking to you.
I loved getting to talk to you too. More than just your mom.
Sweet.
Get to hear about everyone that, or get to actually talk to the person she was raving about.
I'm glad she said good things. That's good. That's a very mom thing to do. All right, cool. Well, we'll be in touch. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into another episode. If you're enjoying my first marathon, it would mean the world to me if you could rate me and share. And if you or someone you know ran a marathon, I'd like to share